this working? Well, well, it's a real honor and a privilege to be here in this space in Dubai, in this WWF arena, and with the Science Panel for the Amazon, two organizations very, very close to my heart, with whom I serve somehow in governance bodies. So the main objective of the events, this event today, is really to tackle concrete pathways to conserve the Amazon. So that is the main goal of the Science Panel for the Amazon. Fostering the dialogue between different stakeholders, of course, looking for long-term strategies and also to contribute to what we call kind of a integrated development agenda for the region with a special definition of development, which is something that we are somehow building together. This new vision on development, of course, integrating nature and people at the heart of the development concept. And also with a very special participation and recognition of the role of the indigenous people in this whole process and the discussion of the development agenda. So the focus of the day today will be the launch of 3 policy briefs developed by the Science Panel for the Amazon. And then I have the pleasure to hear from Emma Torres, an overview of what the Science Panel is doing on this agenda. So we will learn more about the Science Panel. I would like to invite Emma before that, just to tell you that, well, everybody knows Emma here, but Emma has an incredible experience at the United Nations with activities involving management, strategic program development, negotiations to promote sustainable development in general. She coordinates the strategic initiative Biodiversity Superpower, and also serving as long-term player in UNDP, coordinating the Commission on Development and Environment for Latin America and the Caribbean. Well, many different roles, and now leading this process together with Carlos, Aubrey, and Marielle. So, we'll leave this here.
Thank you very much, Roberto. What a pleasure. He is a member of our strategic committee of the Science Panel of the Amazon, and we make him work very hard. So I'm delighted, and thank you very much on behalf of all the panel. Thank you for joining us. I'm Emma Torres. I'm Vice President for the Americans of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, which is a global network of over 2,000 universities devoted to work on the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement. Within that context, science is at the core of our business, and science is at the core of the implementation of the SDGs, and conservation of the tropical forests is at the core of the Paris Agreement. So because of that, it's precisely that, we convene the Science Panel for the Amazon. The Science Panel of the Amazon, we have the privilege to have here our 2 co-chairs, Carlos Nobre and Marielos Peñaclaros, is composed of over 240 scientists, primarily from the region, but also including some indigenous people scientists. And we're very honored to have them, actively participating in the panel. The panel produced its first assessment, which was launched in Glasgow, and is the first assessment ever of the basin. The state of knowledge is a synthesis of the knowledge of the scientific knowledge of the basins. It was extremely well received. Media, we had tremendous media, but also through the science groups and to policymakers. I have to say that we're very, very honored that some of the recommendations of the panel have been referred to also in this presidential summit that we had in the Amazon. The panel since then is starting to produce a number of policy briefs addressing emergent issues or going much deeper in some issues like the tipping points. but also emerging issues. And I think this is what is so important about it. We had a policy brief on restoration, and we are very, very honored and pleased that the largest bank in Brazil, BNDES, now informed by that policy brief, has worked on creating a fund on restoration, a billionaire fund that it will be fantastic. So science can contribute. And the engagement with the financial sector is critical. I have one of my colleagues, Luis, from Global Canopy. We are going to be working on the finance, the road to Belém, right? So, we engage with finance, we engage with the academies of science of the region, with all the academies of science of the region. And now we are producing a MOOC that you should all attend. Is a MOOC about the whole assessment. And it will be online. The SDG Academy, which is the SDSN Academy, is working on it. And the lead authors of the report are, part of the faculty. And the idea is that MOOC will go through, it's free, and it will go to all universities, high schools, so they know what is the Amazon we want. And I think it's what these kind of contributions that the panel can outreach to scientists, to media, to policymakers, to the private sector. Of course, we have in our strategic committee Roberto, who has enormous links with Brazil and the private sector. He's helping us a lot on that as well. The panel also has served as inspiration for other panels, and we have launched the Congo Basin panel on December 3rd, and we're very proud of it, and I think it will be based on the lessons learned from this panel. This panel has a lot to contribute to that, but also the Congo has a lot to contribute to this region. So we'll make that dialogue, and we're very pleased that we are launched that panel, and the aspiration is that we will have the first assessment of the Congo Basin by Belém, COP Belém. So and then we have begun the discussions also for Indonesia and Borneo to move on this. So we are, a number of things will come, so follow us. We will have a number of policy briefs for a number of new issues that are emerging for the region and that might be relevant. For instance, what is sustainable infrastructure in the Amazon could be informed what could be sustainable infrastructure in the Congo. And I think there's a number of things. So I want to, before concluding, to thank very much. We had a lot of partners. Of course, number one of those wonderful scientists that work, generously in support of all this. But we also have very nice partners that supported us from the very beginning, like WWF. When we went in New York to launch the panel, they were there. They helped us. And we had Moore Foundation, Mott Foundation from the very beginning. And of course, my colleagues and friends from the GEF, the Global Environment Facility, and the World Bank now are joining us. So we are very pleased, and I'll thank them all. Thank you all very much, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Emma. So now we have the pleasure to listen to Francisco Costa. Francisco Costa is the lead author of the policy brief, the policy brief, Land Markets and Illegalities. We all know that illegality is a major social and environmental and political risk to the Amazon, especially a high risk on the democratic situation of the region. Francisco is a Brazilian economist with a PhD in economics from Freie University in Berlin, in Germany, full professor at the Federal University of Pará in the Center of Higher Amazon Studies, postgraduate program in economics. Is a visiting fellow at the Center for Brazilian Studies at the Oxford University. So, thank you, Francisco.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for coming. Our policy brief is about the relationships between land market and illegalities, where we think lie the deep roots of the deforestation in the Amazon. We have in the policy brief two general statements. Our first one is that deep roots of deforestation lie in the way the concentrated patterns of land ownership in the Amazonian countries have been imprisoning the Amazon forest and making its destiny subject to a specific land market. The rest of Brazil, for example, transmitted to Amazon its impressively high rural land concentration pattern. In 2017, Gini index for both Brazil and Amazon was greater than 0.8. In an equally concentrated way, 56 million hectares of Amazonian forests were in private establishments in that year. 31 million in establishments bigger than 2,500 hectares. 17 million in establishments bigger than 10,000 hectares. In the first case, about 55% from forests controlled by 1% from establishments. In the second case, about 30% of forests controlled by 0.1% of establishments. Similar patterns are to find in most Amazonian countries. The land market in the Amazon is specific because it produces new land and do that under an institutional situation we could call land chaos that keeps the forested land cheap, allowing the absolute profit margin from the production of the forested land, which is the profit margin of the deforestation process itself, to increase at an average rate of 6.2 yearly in the last 2 decades. Along with this trend, establishments above 2,500 hectares deforested 5.2 million hectares of their acquired land between 2006 and 2017. Institutional situation of land chaos we refer to means that high probabilities of illegality in land ownership relations coexist with low probabilities of effective distinction between what is legal and what is not. In such an institutional environment, grabbed lands are almost perfectly interchangeable with legal ones. And that happens because the state land agencies and organizations of civil societies do not have the means to combine information to demonstrate quickly and at low costs the domain chain of the establishments. In some cases, out of lack of technical resources capable of dealing with the situation's complexity. In other cases, while technical resources exist, there are insufficient financial resources to put them into practice, or, in other cases, the state refuses to use them out of lack of political will. In such a situation, land production through grabbing is an important part of the land market, interlinked with other illegal activities. Supporting this, the fact that 63% of the land privatized between 2006 and 2017 were properties above the legal limit of public land transferred to private agents. Also, the fact that 47% of all the properties investigated by Brazilian Federal Police between 2016 and 2020 resulted from illegal land grabbing mediated by illegal deforestation, criminal organization, this list here, fraud, corruption, other environmental crime, illegal logging, money laundering, 16%, guns possession, 15%, and so extensive list of crimes. With this, we arrived to a broader vision that local institutional arrangements integrate land market, licit and illicit economies, and public supports at all government levels in a dubious wealth accumulation scheme, so that illicit resources finance appropriation of public land and or expropriation of peasants and indigenous lands. These illegally obtained lands are transformed into negotiable properties, with false and legal titles becoming indistinguishable in a market based on land chaos. Put into production, the deforested land resulting from such legitimated systems allows privileged access to different income streams of legal origin. From production, of course, but also from subsidized credit, state financing of services like technical research and assistance and infrastructural facilities. The dynamics are cumulative in time. Our second statement, or general statement, is that there is a dramatic correlation between the deterioration of democracy in the Amazonian countries and increases in those illegal activities surrounding the appropriation and transformation of public forested land into private deforested land. So that as the Democracy Civil Control Index of the Würzburg University fall, a large fraction of the nearly 2,000 environmental and land defenders killed worldwide between 2012 and 2022 were in the region, most in Colombia and Brazil. The average loss of primary forest cover doubled between 2011 and 2022 in Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, and Ecuador. In Brazil, the annual deforestation of public lands increased threefold in the period. The coca cultivation area increased fourfold between 2010 and 2022 in Colombia. Expansion of illegal mining, mainly in Brazil and Venezuela, but also in Ecuador, French Guiana, Guyana, Peru, and Suriname. In Venezuela, the ecosystem of crime is organized around illegal gold mining. A dramatic expansion of illegal gold mining in Bolivia and Peru. Our recommendation to tackle the foundation of the land market based on land chaos, and our governments and civil societies with informational resources, both processing infrastructure and organized information, to reconstitute domain chains swiftly and cheaply, to contain other illegalities, promote national and international governance aiming Amazon to improving international verification systems of the origin of potential illegally sourced goods, strengthening the implementation of the Leticia Pact and the Belém Declaration, putting regional governance and conservation policy mechanisms into practice. To prevent of land market and its entire ecosystem of illegalities on the vulnerable modes of production and life, strengthening the economies of local communities, small farmers, and indigenous peoples, strengthening the social cohesion of peasants and grassroots organization of indigenous peoples. Thank you again for coming, and please consider to download our policy briefs. Thank you.
Thank you, Francisco. Fantastic. Thank you very much. So as we saw, Amazons, we used to call Amazons and not Amazon because we have so many different situations in the Amazon. But Amazons are all about wicked problems and land property rights and territorial governance. Basically, it's extremely interesting example of a wicked problem. We'll follow with the presentation of Ana Carolina Fionini, who will present us the SPA policy brief on infrastructure for the Amazon. Infrastructure, as we all know, is also an area full of ambiguities and complex choice we need to make. So Ana Carolina is a postdoctoral researcher at the Energy Planning Program of COP from the University of Rio de Janeiro. She holds a bachelor degrees in biology. I'm also a biologist, so it's a pleasure to be among biologists. With a master in environmental and energy planning at COP, also Rio. PhD in interdisciplinary ecology at the University of Florida. The master's was focused on degraded lands and REDD, and the PhD on compliance of the Brazilian Forest Code. Well, she also works on the AFOLU team and contributes to the incorporation of terrestrial biodiversity, generally speaking. So on. Thank you very much. You speak from here?
Yes. Oh. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. So I'm Ana Carolina, but I will present in the name of a whole bunch of people. The policy brief, A New Infrastructure for the Amazon, was led by Roberto Sheffi and Rosana Barrantes. So I'm one of the co-authors, right? So, what? It's wrong. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sorry. I had a map showing the Amazon, saying that most people think about the Amazon mostly as a rainforest and a big river basin, but actually, oh, there is not even the other one. Actually, more than 47 million people live in the Amazon. So, and 70% of those people live in cities. And additionally, 410 indigenous groups at least live there, and over 6 million small farmers. So you have this huge diversity in the region. So how is the infrastructure planned for this region, right? The infrastructure today has only prioritized mainly national interests rather than local needs. So it has been fought for energy, for mining, for agriculture, rather than local needs. So even though there are more than 160 dams in the Amazon, and 9% of the deforestation is near roads, so happening in a buffer of 5.5 kilometers of roads mostly. So more than 1 million people do not have access to electricity. And I'm talking only about the Brazilian Amazon because this is the only place that is estimated the people that don't have electricity. So the infrastructure is not getting to people, right? So what we need a new infrastructure paradigm for the Amazon. A new infrastructure should be fought for and planned by local people, right? So, and then all their perspectives and reality should be taken in consideration. So the new infrastructure paradigm primary concern should be accessibility and connectivity, considering a zero deforestation as an aim, and also enhancing the living of people living there. So knowledge and science should be the base for that, and they should consider the climate variability in the region that already exists, and also the climate change that is already happening and getting worse and affecting the region. Like as we saw this year, the El Niño effect was huge and had a big impact in the river transportation infrastructure, for example, right? So in addition, all stakeholders should be like actively involve, especially traditional people and indigenous people should be respected and fought first when you plan this infrastructure. Regulation enforcement, as Francisco was saying, whenever you have infrastructure, you facilitate the access to place, right? So anything that facilitates access should be fought together with regulation and enforcement also. Otherwise, you facilitate illegality, right? So all this in resume should be part of a plan to create wealth to the region. So the new infrastructure should be a part of the plan to create wealth and job for the region while keeping the biodiversity there and the other ecosystem service natural contributions to people that nature has there, right? So the policy brief, I'm really sad that you don't have the background photos of anything. I'm sorry for that. So we focus on 4 things: transportation, energy, water and sanitation, and digital infrastructure, giving a glimpse of the possible solutions that we have in those areas. In terms of transportation, it should prioritize low carbon transportation options. And we highlight, as the basin has extensively river, so the use of river systems complemented by small plane transportation. Also, of course, thinking about the season variability and how this could be the resilience of creating infrastructure when you have, for example, a drought that we faced this year, how this should be done. So in terms of energy, the people that do not have access, should be thought about decentralization energy options with local available resources, mostly thinking about renewable resource, for example, waste of agricultural products or local bioeconomy options. So they should be used together with other options, such as solar, for example, in a mini-grid system. So you can reduce the transmission lines. So it could be produced in mini-grids within the regions. In terms of water and sanitation, 7 in 10 Amazonians, they don't have access to water or sanitation. So that has to be a huge thing in the Amazon now. If people have to think about options. And these options can vary from a wide set of nature-based solutions. So there are many options that can be thought about different scales. So if you think about a city or like a small-scale communities, there are different nature-based solutions options. And finally, in terms of digital infrastructures, as most of us know, the region has intense lack of internet access compared to the other regions of the countries that have Amazonia. So it should be improved now with the satellite options, together with 5th and 6th generation smartphones, internet. This could be used and financed to promote inclusion and also improve health, education, all could be improved together with the digitalization, right? And then I cannot read the enabling conditions. That's the slide I actually wanted to read, but there are several enabling conditions. So, for example, you need a better governance system for the region. You need more regulations and enforcement, control of corruption, fight for corruption, and also let me remember all that. Active involvement all stakeholders. We highlighted also the need of research and development for the region, once many of these areas that we are talking about don't have enough research focus specifically in the regions. So it's very important to further develop this. And also I finalize with financing, because to create all this infrastructure that we're talking about, we need financing, and this guy is going to be talking about that. So that's it. Thank you, Roberto.
Oh, thank you very much, Ana. So as Ana said, we now move to environmental services and natural capital arena with Pedro Moura Costa, who will present the SPA policy on human impact on carbon emission and losses in ecosystem services. Pedro is an internationally recognized expert in climate policy, carbon finance, GHG mitigation projects. He started in the last millennium, so he was one of the pioneers in this game, with development of carbon-funded projects globally, and he founded EcoSecurities. EcoSecurities was one of the leaders in that market in the 90s, with more than 700 projects, mitigation projects worldwide. More recently, Pedro co-founded the BV Rio Institute, the Circular Action Hub for Circular Economy, also responsible commodities facilities for zero deforestation, not only soy, grains in Brazil, so all kinds of grains. Pedro is a member of the steering committee of the Voluntary Carbon Markets Integrity Initiative, VCMI, an honorary fellow of the International Emissions Trading Organization, IETA, and director of Oxford Climate Policy. So I stop here. So
Might as well stop, Roberto. But thank you very much, Roberto. Thank you very much, SDSN, for inviting me to co-author this note with my co-lead author, Luciana Gatti, who will present the rest of the paper with a big focus on the science of the forest. I'm going to glance through that and talk more about finance now. It's a good segue from Francisco and Anna that, essentially all of the, we should think of the Amazon as a whole. People tend to fragment that into subcomponents. But yeah, illegality is a big drive of forest degradation. Poor infrastructure is the same. And what do we do about that? Essentially, how do we go about here? There we are. Essentially, there's a lot of factors contributing to the degradation of the Amazon. I mean, deforestation, fire, degradation, and climate change. Hold on, did I skip one slide here? How do I, yeah, yeah, can you help me with putting the second slide? This one? No, is it this one? No, the first slide.
Maybe.
Next one?
Maybe it didn't work like mine. So.
Okay, we all know that degradation in deforestation is creating kind of climate change in the Amazon, turning it into a carbon source. There was a slide somewhere that the Amazon should be a sink. It absorbs about 0.7 gigaton per year of carbon emissions. But because of all anthropogenic interferences in the forest, it's now turning that into a source, especially in areas that you have more deforestation, more than 20% forest loss per year. Some of these areas are actually reaching tipping points that are very dangerous and could create irreversible scenarios for non-recovery of these forests anymore. So, extreme climate events start to occur in these areas, which exacerbate the human-driven changes that we are inflicting ourselves. Let's hope that it goes to the night. Oh yeah, that's what it was the previous one, but I already talked about that. Primate and secondary forest should be the Amazon should be a sink, but it's a source because of anthropogenic interferences. So, basic recommendation, we should conserve and restore the Amazon now at a large scale. We should try to end all deforestation and avoid forest degradation now. There's no time more to wait. We should be building arcs of restoration by 2020 in priority areas that are reaching tipping points. And we should use native, local, indigenous knowledge in the process of the restoration. There is a lot of knowledge in the region that has to be brought into this big effort. Okay, but you know, we can all dream. I mean, but to make it happen, we need funding. And how to fund that? We're talking about something at an enormous scale that requires a lot of funding. There's a lot of talk. I mean, 100,000 people around here, a lot of them talking about carbon markets and carbon markets being a panacea for funding everything that we need, from technology all the way to the Amazon. However, you know, indeed, I mean, my whole life, I come from carbon markets, and I spent my whole life creating carbon credits out of anything that reduces sequester carbon, and they do have a role to play. But we have to recognize that carbon markets also have their limitations. I mean, for a variety of reasons. You know, the current models of carbon finance, and I differentiate carbon and climate finance. Carbon through carbon credits, they restrict the ability of us deploying climate finance at scale. I mean, there is the need for requirements to ensure additionality, to prevent leakage, to promote the permanence of these carbon stocks created for the long term. Those are requirements of the carbon market, but those in turn also make it a lot more cumbersome for you to deploy capital at a large scale, and you end up with what the Brazilian government used to call it the chicken pox red approach, you know, dots on a map, o red catapora, né, como dizia o governo brasileiro. So there is a need, and as a result, what you see here is that the tall bar is what we need in terms of carbon credits, the carbon credit potential contribution to this problem. And the small bar at the moment there is all the credits that were issued since Vero was created. So it just illustrates that there is a problem, there is a little constraint. So consequently, there is a need for innovation in climate finance. Now I differentiate from carbon finance and carbon markets to climate finance more widely, to fund forest protection and restoration at the landscape level, at the whole region level, and avoid the challenges of project or program-based approaches. I mean, projects are more limited. You know, there are some standards that are focusing on jurisdiction, like the R trees and so on, but even those still suffer from some of the constraints that we have here. So we need innovation, financial innovation, and complementary approaches. So complementary approaches in which you can deploy climate finance at scale. And examples include, for instance, green or climate bonds, sovereign bonds to implement the UNFCCC. And indeed, I mean, there are a few recent examples here. Brazil raised a $2 billion ESG sovereign bond just weeks before the COP. And actually, you know, they raised all the money. There was demand for $5 billion, and the use of proceeds could include other things like the infrastructure that Anna was mentioning, or activities for land tenure clarity and combat illegality. So you have a much broader range of things that you can fund, and you have a lot more funds to raise and deploy at a much quicker scale. We should start looking for payment for carbon stocks, for standing forests, not only for planted forests or avoided deforestation. I mean, the forests are there. They are providing an environmental service. We should be able, we need to reward that. And performance-based payments are Article 6, and perhaps, you know, where this finance comes from, potentially kind of levies on the fossil fuel sector. I mean, the sector last year, according to an IMF report that was issued 1 week before the COP, showed that there was $7.1 trillion of fossil fuel subsidies last year. That is absurd. That's obscene. I mean, if you get that much of subsidies, why don't you give some money to protect the forest that you're so much contributing to destroy? So we need to channel capital to a wider and more diffuse and complementary activities. That is what I just mentioned as examples of what my former presenter showed. We should look at infrastructure, land tenure, and we should perhaps move away from the KPIs, from the metrics of tons of carbon, to a metrics of hectares of forest. we are looking at forests. We need to protect forests, high carbon stock, low carbon stocks, but forests are forests. And forests provide a lot more services, and be it environmental, be it social, than if you just focus on carbon stocks. As I mentioned, Brazilian bond, the allocation of resource of the proceeds, which is here. Uruguay last year also raised a bond for the NDC. So if they raise $2 billion, if they meet the NDC, they pay a certain interest rate, was 6%. No, with a discount, so they pay 5.7. If they don't meet the NDC target at that time, they pay a premium, which is 6.3. So those are different ways of raising money at really a much larger scale. $2 billion is the whole carbon market put together last year. And indeed, I mean, that's what the Brazilian government published on Monday, on the beginning of the COP, is that idea it was described as a fund, when in fact those that have been working on the conceptualization of this thing were more thinking of a mechanism that can be more widely approved. But in any case, it just illustrates that people are thinking of new approaches to fund forests as opposed to carbon stocks at scale, and that's what we need. So just to finalize, the recommendations is to explore innovations in current frameworks of climate finance, including but not restricted to carbon markets, explore the concept of regional or national programs to coordinate this flow of financial mechanisms, and ensure that finance for forest restoration conservation must be inclusive, equitable for all the stakeholders in the region. And the final message from the policy brief that Luciana and I wrote is to, we need to avoid the reversible tipping points in the Amazon, and there is an urgent need to attract and deploy capital at the scale that enables us to conserve and restore forests in the Amazon. And this will require innovative approach to climate and forest finance in addition to carbon markets. And this is our recommendation, and you can download our papers in a lot of languages. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you. Always leading this discussion. I really think this is absolutely important to, maybe to move a little bit further on the natural capital arena instead of climate and carbon. So after the presentations of the policy briefs, we have the pleasure to listen to Pascal Martinez. He's a senior environmentalist, a specialist of the Global Environmental Fund, who is dealing with national and international, private, and all kinds of organizations such as FAO and many other international organizations dealing with land use and all that. So Pascal, he will share with us some words on how finance, science, and all that combination of science, finance impacts the development arena that, as we saw, must be inclusive, must combine social, environmental, and economic components. So thank you very much, Pascal.
Thank you very much. Tori, it sounds like a complex question. No, thank you very much for the invitation. It's very great pleasure to be here. Actually, the science is critical for the GEF. No? It's very at the core of the GEF thinking. I'd like to remind the words of our former director, Gustavo Fonseca, Brazilian. That most of you must have known. He used to say that you can't have effective action without informed policy, and you can't have informed policy without solid science. And this is that simple. And when I hear the three presentations that we just had, wow, it's incredible, because we really need this. This is our compass. This is the fuel of our strategy. And without this, we cannot go anywhere, I think. And I'm really eager to read these assessments. And I feel a pity not to have read it before coming here, because, it's very extraordinary results. the Jeff is, we have this 4-cycle process, no? For 4-year cycle process. All the replenishment period begins with workshops with renowned scientists to try to see what needs to be done now and to be presented to the Jeff donors. And it's systematically we do that. 1.5 years, 2 years before the replenishment. So a very long process that begins from science, from the very beginning. And then all the way of the implementation of our cycle, we use constantly the science findings that we share among us. It's incredible, and this is, I think, one of the tremendous interest to work as a Jeff. We keep learning all the time because we are always benefiting from the science, and we have many ways to use science when we are defining and implementing our strategy. We have also the scientific and technical advisory panel, scientists who also guide us during the implementation of our project and programs. These scientists systematically look at each and every one of our projects when they are above $2 million for Jeff funding, and also they provide guidance. They made some specific studies, for instance, on the assessment of climate risk and how it can impact projects. Also, how we have a big push to be more transformative. So the transformative agenda also has been informed by this panel. So they provide guidance, and also they review the project. So really, this is my first message: is we need you guys, and because we always work close to science as much as we can. No, it's not only providing funds, implementing and checking that we have the result that we wanted. It's more than that. And then in the Amazon, well, Jeff is. I will speed up. Well, Jeff is fundamentally investing in the Amazon because we all know the importance globally of the Amazon. We are supportive. We finance the SPA partially with $2 million. We have supported the panel of the Amazon, scientific panel of the Amazon. We have this program, Sustainable Landscape Program of the Amazon, that has begun in 2015, sorry, so nearly 10 years ago. And now we are with a new phase. We have the 8 countries of the Amazon, but the last one should be confirmed in the next Jeff Council in February. And it's about $300 million grant for the Amazon. And the Amazon is part of a bigger program focused on the conservation of primary forest, which includes other regions in the world and Congo, Indo-Malay, West Africa, Mesoamerica, and with all the participating countries, we capture more or less close to 90% of the primary forest in the world. So really, and it is the biggest program of Jeff 8. So the Amazon is part of this big program of Jeff, and the Amazon is the biggest part. No, so. And I'm very happy to hear that you just launched the panel, scientific panel for the Congo Basin, because this is what I want. I had planned to ask you, please, can you do the same for the Congo? Because the Congo is part of the program of the Jeff, but also 10 years ago, this focus began with the Amazon. Then in Jeff, the next cycle, we added Congo, and now we added the other region. So it's a progressive trend, no? And Congo is just the next one. So it's great that you are doing that, because it is exactly what we need, and it is also very important for the funding, because if I think that you have so much attention today on the Amazon, and we see also the Jeff resources allocation for the countries, maybe the countries from the Congo are not so well considered in the forest, in the finance landscape, because of the lack of science, we don't know exactly what's happening there, as we know in the Amazon. So it's very critical, I think, this work. So yes, happy to work with you and to continue for a long time, and congratulations for all the job that you are doing, which is very, very amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Pascal. So we have now 5-10 minutes maximum to for the audience to ask questions to the speakers, but I'd like to start with Mauricio, the CEO of WWF, so if you can say a few words on. Well, yeah. This one.
No, just congratulate all and say along the same lines of the Jeff representative, how could we live so long without an Amazon Science Panel? Right? Because, you know, and if Jeff is saying, well, we take decisions based on science, and then the Amazon Science Panel makes things easier. And we saw, you know, the new president in Brazil, Lula, in his first speech, talking about zero deforestation by 2030, which is a recommendation from the Amazon Science Panel. And we saw BNDES launching the Arc of Deforestation financial mechanism, Arc of Reforestation financial mechanism, also based in the Amazon Science Panel. So decision makers are using science, and that's much easier to do so with, you know, aggregation of in reports and policy briefs such as this, but also NGOs and campaigning organizations. So I'm happy to say that all our strategy in WWF for the Amazon is also based on science and also based on the recommendations of the Amazon Science Panel. So it's so great to have all of these, and now infrastructure, and now all of this is so important. So I'm super pleased to see all of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maurice. So I think we have time for 3 questions. So please, maybe we can get the 3 questions and then give room for the speakers to answer. So, yeah, you have a mic somewhere there?
Yeah, thanks. Very interesting panel. A question actually for each. Chico, if you could say something about trends in terms of recognition of deforestation, often associated with pasture as a kind of improvement, benfeitoria for purposes of titling public lands, to what extent that still is going on in Brazil, because that's historically been a problem. To Carolina, I wondered if you could comment a bit on the issue of governance related to infrastructure planning, including issues related to transparency, participation. To what extent are large infrastructure projects being aligned with some of these other goals related to climate, reducing deforestation, and other issues, including prior analysis of risks and alternatives? And finally, to Pedro, how do you see, in addition to the other questions that you talked about, leakage, additionality, and permanence, the risks of carbon markets and other kinds of, especially carbon markets, other kinds of finance, contributing to land speculation, especially in territories occupied by traditional populations, including related to the issue of grilagem, which Pedro talked about. Thanks.
Thank you. We have maybe one more question from the audience. Otherwise, yeah? Okay.
Thank you, and congratulations to all the panelists, and very interesting policy briefs you brought. My question is to all panelists is how we change this game in terms of how we value more forests from a regulatory perspective, and then can trigger finance and trigger the other, so for how forests can be more accountable for instead of being valuing less and being deforested. So how we can trigger that from a regulatory perspectives and others, that we could move and change this game in land use, in deforestation in the Amazon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So maybe you can start with Francisco, then Pedro, just addressing questions and giving your final remarks.
I would like to ask to answer the question in Portuguese, because the short time. Sobre a pergunta das possibilidades de avanço na relação entre quer dizer, a visualização do desmatamento e a atribuição de responsabilidade. Eu diria que, em última instância, é essa a questão. Sim, pois bem, mas a chave toda é como você, na visualização dos processos, você pode fazer atribuição de responsabilidade. E aí, vindo na direção da minha discussão, não é, aqui temos o principal problema, porque não dispomos de mecanismos capazes de articular o que se consegue ver hoje como desmatamento, como processo físico, né, com as responsabilidades pessoais que determinam esse processo, porque essas identificações fundiárias não são feitas, não existem. Então, qualquer avanço que se faça apenas no plano macro tende a fracassar, porque falta essa capacidade de uma visualização em que você linka os processos claramente com a dimensão micro e os instrumentos necessários para isso não existem, não estão postos.
Thank you.
Isso eu tenderia a levar para uma discussão sobre a questão geral de reverter as tendências. Enquanto você não dispor, né, dos mecanismos que realmente, né, possam distinguir entre o que é uma propriedade legal e o que não é legal, enquanto essa possibilidade de distinção não existir, que é o caso, ela não existe, então a reversão fica completa. As outras estratégias ficam, em geral, comprometidas. Então, na nossa perspectiva, tem que se começar por aí, não é? Porque no mercado, não é, em que é impossível a distinção entre, não é, a confiança, não é, transforma o ilegal no mesmo nível de aquisição de valor do legal.
Thank you, Francisco. I
Então,
think we are running out of time, so maybe Ana and then Pedro. And
I
we
will
have
complement
closing remarks.
on Francisco,
Yeah.
connecting the two questions, actually. Right, so you asked about how to change trends, and then you asked, in the end, how to value forests, right, standing forests. The first thing, in my opinion, I'm not talking about the policy brief and all the other options, it would be changing the land price scheme. So forest land is worth less than non-forest land. So that's a base concept, right? Even if you think about illegality or anything. So if you make a way, and it's not easy to create a way to reduce that, but you can create incentives in terms of public policy to reduce this gap, because there's like a intense incentive to the forest just by the land price itself, especially if you think these guerrillas have huge amount of land. So any change in land price. And the other thing, we didn't focus too much about governance, so I'll have to say I'm sorry, but it's extremely important. It requires a policy brief by itself just to focus in the governance in the Amazon, but unfortunately, the imbalance of power is driving infrastructure so far. So that's a problem. So sorry.
Pedro.
Yeah, and very quickly, yeah, exactly. I mean, non-forest land is worth more than forest. Carbon market should have reversed this thing, and I have to finish my speech. We can discuss outside. Thank you very much, everyone.
Before we end, I'd like to invite Marielus for the closing remarks.
I just want to thank you all for coming. Thank you also to the lead authors and the team, because it has been really a major effort. As many of you have mentioned, science is very important for the decisions that we need to take. I think what we are also trying to do with the SPA is really to combine the standard science with traditional knowledge from indigenous people and local communities. I think that together we can really come up with a new paradigm. But we do need to understand what we are talking at, and the type of work that Francisco was mentioning. It looks like criminology, but that's the kind of work that we need. I thank you all, and I hope you can join us today, 4:45 in the Amazon Hub. We have the other 2.5 policy brief presenting. Thank you again for coming, and thank you all for hosting us and checking.